A group of Democrats introducing the Working Americans Tax Cut Act, which proposes a permanent tax cut to Americans making between $46,000 and around $80,000 a year. It would be paid for by a surtax on millionaires. Joining us right now is Senator Chris Van Hollen. He serves on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee as well. Senator, let's talk about this proposal. There's a long list of Democrats who are working with you on this proposal. What's the meat of the bill?
Well, good morning. It's great to be with you. The fundamental idea behind this bill is that if you're earning an income that's pretty much just keeping pace with your cost of living expenses, your basic cost of living expenses, in other words, a living wage, that you shouldn't be paying a federal income tax. These are people who are living paycheck to paycheck. Costs are going up, and we do have a huge affordability problem in the country. As we work to bring down costs, the other side of the equation, of course, is to make sure people have a little bit more income in their pocket that they can keep from their paychecks. And so that's what this bill does. It is paid for by a surtax on millionaires, the first dollar over $1 million.
The way that you're paying or proposing to pay for this is to have a surtax that comes in on millionaires. I think a 5% tax to the first dollar an individual makes over $1 million. An additional 10% tax on the first dollar an individual makes over $2 million. And a 12% tax to the first dollar an individual makes over $5 million.
That's correct. Those are the surtaxes that help fully pay for and offset the cost of the bill.
Some of the criticism that's come in on this includes things like the Tax Foundation, which says that on net, they expect both of these plans, this and another plan that came from Senator Booker, would reduce long-run GDP while increasing the federal government's budget deficit. What do you say to that?
Well, these are two very different proposals. People shouldn't mix them. This bill fully pays for itself. So unlike the, Republican tax giveaway to the rich last year, which increased our debt by $4 trillion. This doesn't increase our debt for one penny. So it's important that people distinguish between the different plans. Also, as you know, when you put more money into the pockets of middle-class workers, they go out and spend it. So actually, you're going to get a bigger boost than you do by giving tax breaks to millionaires and billionaires.
Senator Van Hollen, under this plan, though, the number of tax filers with no income tax would increase from 37 million people currently to $66 million. And there are people who have questioned for years the idea of having millions of people who don't pay any money into the federal government, essentially.
Well, of course, they do pay. They pay in their FICA taxes. They pay Social Security. They pay
Social Security,
Medicare.
Which comes back. Social Security comes back to them in the end.
And as you know, unlike many countries, we have a federal system. So people are paying their state and local taxes. I mean, in many European countries, for example, the central government is the primary payer for education. In the United States, it is paid for locally. So people are paying taxes to support the services they're getting. But let's ask the question, do you really think if you're making just the living wage that the federal income tax should take away that money? So yes, it does increase the number of people who don't pay federal income tax. As you point out, there are already millions who don't, but they are paying these other taxes.
No, but the question becomes, when you get to a point where you are voting on a federal level, most people would say, sure, I'd like to pay no taxes if there is no skin in the game. And I understand having a graduated tax system, a progressive tax system, that makes perfect sense. But as you get more and more people who are paying in nothing on the federal level in terms of what those taxes are representative, you end up with a more and more populist government, or more and more populist proposals that come through that basically say, yeah, I don't have any skin in the game. Go after these other people for it.
Well, as I said, first of all, people do pay state and local taxes. They pay their FICA taxes.
State and local, yes.
And I guess
Federal,
the question, right, but the question for you is really if someone's making a living wage, right, if they're just covering their basic cost of living expenses, should we tax that away as opposed to asking the folks who can afford to pay a little more? I mean, they're making $1 million every year. Can't they pay a little bit more to make sure the person's making $45,000 a year is able
There's
to meet their
probably
basic
ways we
living
should go
expenses.
after affordability so that people are making living wages. Absolutely. I guess the question is, do you redistribute all income set up this way? And if so, are you chipping away at the incentivization structure to convince people to work harder for some of these things? And that's not to say that people making $45,000 a year are not working very hard. You've got teachers, you've got firemen, you've got laborers who are working very, very hard for these things. But there are affordability problems that are inherent in our society at this point that probably need to be tackled, whether that's housing, whether that's going after inflation. And what I will say is, Senator, this looks like a plan for what's going to be in 2028, how the Democrats are going to come after this, because it's not bipartisan. This is something that just the Democrats are supporting at this point. How do you look at 2028 in terms of what you think the Democrats should be doing to position for that?
Well, first of all, it's not either or, right, when it comes to the affordability equation. Yes, of course, we should work on reducing costs of housing, rental, mortgages, healthcare, and all of that. But the flip side of that coin, of course, is how much money do you have to pay for what you're trying to afford? And if you're just getting by, my belief is you should provide a little more, money that people can keep. So you're right. Republicans don't support this. Republicans supported a tax bill that provided the overwhelming gains to the very rich. They increased the deficit, by the way, in the process, which we don't. The bill that was passed by Republicans provides about 75% of the gains to the top 20%, whereas what this bill does is provide the gains to people who are in the lower 80%. So, yes, I think this is going to be a very important part of the discussion that we have with the American people going forward. I think Americans overwhelmingly agree that if you're working really hard and earning a paycheck and you're just at that level where you're meeting your basic cost of living expenses, that the federal government should let you keep more of what you earn.
What do you do about the Trump administration's law at this point for no taxes on tips, no taxes on overtime? Those were very popular with working people.
Yeah, I'm glad you raised that. They are. And in fact, if you're in that group, overwhelming, you're going to do better through this proposal, because the Republican plan, the Trump plan, as you know, while they increased, they provided the tax cuts for the very rich permanently. The no tips on overtime expires in 2028. So what this bill will do, if you're in that group of people, you're actually going to do better, because you're going to get this working Americans tax cut, and you're going to get it on a permanent basis. And by the way, if you're making that same amount of income that someone's getting from tips, but you don't get your income from the form of tips, you're going to benefit from this as well. In other words, if you're making $46,000 a year, should we really say the person who's making that money based on tips should get a better tax deal than the person who's not? Under our proposal, everybody does better.
Bernie Sanders and Ro Khanna introduced legislation as well. And this is something that's designed to enact a $4.4 trillion wealth tax on the 1,000 or so billionaires in the United States to try and pay for things like universal child care, Medicare expansion, and other social initiatives. Are you in favor of that legislation?
Yes, I am. As you know, in our country right now, people are able to pass on huge amounts of wealth from generation to generation without any tax because of the step up in basis. And as a result, we're really turning into an aristocracy where people are just inheriting billion-dollar fortunes. And so, yeah, if we're not going to continue to be head in that direction, then my view is, yes, we've got to develop some kind of wealth tax.